because they have this very slow metabolism that allowed them to prevail in very difficult conditions, go a long time without food if they didn't have it. But if they're on the modern diet, that makes them very susceptible to diabetes. These are Seminole Indians living in the Florida Everglades. Dr. Price was there before the land rush, the real estate boom. And once again, you can see this beautiful facial structure. These look like princes and princesses, very noble looking faces. And this is the normal facial structure of human beings. This is the way that everyone is supposed to look. This is what our genetics provides for. But whether or not our bodies are built to express that, to have that full expression of the genetics, depends on the building materials. That is the diet. And here we have, if we go back, let's see, to our Indian princess here, beautiful broad face. This woman is from the same tribe, so this is the same genetics, but her parents were eating processed food and she grew up on processed food. So you see the narrowing of the face, the crowding of the teeth. And the teeth tell the tale, because if this were just a matter of having crooked teeth, well, we just take our kids, why bother? Why not just eat junk food? We just take our kids to the orthodontist and straighten the teeth, right? But the teeth are the visible sign of the entire structure of the body. And when the teeth are crooked, it's a sign that there's been compromise in other parts of the body as the body was created and built. So when the teeth are straight, it means that there's plenty of room in the head for these critical master organs in the head, the pituitary, the pineal, and the hypothalamus. Now, the hypothalamus is the seat of impulse control. And what are we seeing in our children today? In the violence and the behavior problems, it's lack of impulse control. And when we think of the stolid Native American able to go through many privations without showing emotion and so forth, that's impulse control. That's a very good, strong hypothalamus. When the teeth are straight, it's a sign that there's been good development of the entire skeletal system, good musculature. You tend to see very good posture. Keen eyesight and hearing. I have a little question now. How many people in this room need corrective lenses? How many people do not need corrective lenses? So about 10 to 15%. Now, if we collectively were a tribe having to depend on our hunting skills, we would not survive with only 15% with perfect eyesight. Optimal function of all the organs, so all the organs, the heart, the pancreas, the liver, the kidneys, etc., have been built properly and work at optimal function. And then the brain. The brain is a physical object, and there's a whole chemistry of behavior and feeling good. That depends on good nutrition. And Dr. Price found a very optimistic, cheerful people. And finally, when the head is broad, when the face is broad, the pelvic opening is round. And that is the ideal shape for a baby to get out. That's the shape that's going to give you the most surface area. When the teeth are crowded, there's compromised space in the head. The head is more narrow. There's not enough space for these organs may be compromised or squeezed. You tend to see poor development, poor posture. People are easily injured. Poor eyesight and hearing, compromised function of one or more of the organs. And then you start to see the depression, behavior problems, learning problems. That is a nutritional problem. And finally, the pelvic opening, instead of being round, is kind of squished. So it's oval. And that makes childbirth much more difficult. And we... I'm not critical of all these cesareans that are being done. Some of them may be unnecessary, but most of them are absolutely life-saving. And I think we don't realize what we're saying when we criticize the cesarean, because before that came along and before the modern methods of child delivery, childbirth in industrial cultures was life-threatening to women. One birth in 10 ended in a very, very agonizingly painful death of the mother. So we need to kind of put all this in perspective. Dr. Price went to the South Seas, where he made a point of going to isolated islands. This is my favorite page in his book. The beautiful facial structure and dental structure of these young men on an isolated South Sea island. And these are teenagers. These are teenage boys. Our teenagers don't look so happy, do they? Yeah. These are women from the island. He noted that all the men look like brothers and all the women look like sisters, even if they were not related. That's because their diet brought out the optimal expression of their genetics. And this beautiful lady is 90 years old. We do not know the average lifespan of these primitive people, and of course that's one of the criticisms that we hear. Oh, but these people only lived to age 40. But there was not a lot of childhood death. These people knew how to have healthy babies. And there were plenty of elderly people. True, there were people who were killed through trauma. It was a dangerous life. But the elders tended to live apart. They had foods that were easy to gather and to process were reserved for the elders. So there are special elder foods, and the elders played very important roles in the culture as teachers and wise men, wise women and wise men. So looking at the diet of the South Seas, we now have a very different type of diet. This is the tropics. They had plenty of plant foods in the diet, fruits and vegetables. One of the most important fruits in the diet was the coconut. The coconut is actually a fruit. It's not a nut. Very high-fat fruit. They also had a starchy fruit, the taro root, which was prepared by fermentation. This is a theme we find worldwide, that the foods high in carbohydrates like grains and the taro root tended to be fermented. But nevertheless, the basis of the diet was animal foods. Here you see the octopus and the crab, and they ate the whole animal. They will eat the organ meats of the crab. They will take the shell and grind it up and add it to their food for calcium. They had pigs on the island, and the pigs were cooked in underground pits, and they ate the whole animal, including the fat and the organ meats and the head and the skin and everything. This young man is having a snack, which he did not get from a vending machine. He's eating a delicious fatty sea worm. Once again, the same pattern. Those who had been introduced to Western foods, usually by the missionaries, and Dr. Price was a devout Methodist. He taught Sunday school, went to church all his life, but he became very disillusioned with the missionary program because he recognized that it was the missionaries who were bringing in the foods, and they were the wedge that introduced these. And because people looked up to the missionaries, they thought, well, we want to eat like them also. And the first thing that happened was the rampant tooth decay, causing a tremendous suffering. And then in the next generation, the altered facial structure, the narrowing of the face, the crowding of the teeth. And what else has happened? Those beautiful smiles have disappeared. And these two young people have an expression on their faces of someone who thinks he's been cheated. They have a chip on their shoulder. And they have been cheated. They may not be able to put it into words, but they've been cheated of their birthright of physical perfection. That's the birthright of every single human being born on this planet. And to make sure that everyone has that birthright is a partnership. It's a partnership with the Creator. The Creator provided the blueprint, and we have to have the wisdom to provide the right building materials. And I do believe that this sense of not being given what we deserve to have, which is an attractive, healthy body and a keen, clear mind, is the root of so much unhappiness and violence and addiction and depression and so forth among our young people, especially in this generation. These photos were taken in a tuberculosis ward in Hawaii. Every single child in this ward had dental deformities. Now, the dental deformities were not the cause of the tuberculosis, but the same conditions that prevented the optimal expression of their genetic potential made these children very susceptible to diseases like tuberculosis. Dr. Price studied the Aboriginal people in Australia. Those living in the bush were noted for their strength, agility, their stamina, their keen eyesight and hearing. These are Aboriginal women who have never been to the dentist, never used a toothbrush, but their teeth are so perfect, they look like false teeth. The diet of these people is fascinating. There's a long article about it on our website. They had both plant and animal foods, and we see the same things, the same themes, a tremendous emphasis on the fats. If they killed an animal that was too lean, they threw it away. And then they ate a lot of grains and legumes in this diet, and these were all prepared with great care, usually by soaking them in running water for about 2 weeks before they prepared them. And once again, the same pattern. Those who became modernized had tremendous tooth decay. Those who remained and stayed in their native lifestyle had good, strong teeth well into old age. They died with good teeth. And then the next generation, the altered facial structure, what Dr. Price called the underdevelopment of the middle third of the face, quite sunken in here, and then the crowded teeth and overbites. Dr. Price went to Africa. He went into the interior of Africa, into parts of Africa that had very few white men had been before. And here he could not get over what he found. He found 7 tribes with 100 or more members in every tribe and not a single cavity, zero cavities in over 700 people. Even those who filed their teeth as a custom did not get cavities. And he found 0 dental deformities. Beautiful, broad facial structure among the Africans. Now, his African experience allowed him to compare different diets practiced by the same racial group, 3 different diets. The first diet was the diet of the herding people, like the Maasai. They kept cattle and goats, and their diet consisted of milk, meat, and blood. There were virtually no plant foods in this diet. It was a very high-fat diet. The warriors at their prime consumed about 1.5 gallons of milk, usually raw fermented milk, every day, which gave them the equivalent of 3 sticks of butterfat a day. 3 sticks of butter a day. And yet they had no heart disease. The second group was the hunter-gatherer. They did not milk animals. They did not keep animals. They hunted and fished and collected plant foods. These people also had no cavities. They were very sturdy and strong. They had a sacred food, which was liver, which was so sacred they only touched it with their swords or their spear tips. But it was a mixed diet. Then the third group were the agriculturalists. They did not keep animals. They did not hunt. They grew corn, beans, and squash. They were not vegans, however, because a very important part of the diet was insects. There was only 10% animal food in this diet, but it was a very nutrient-dense animal food of insects. Now, these people, the agriculturalists, did have a certain amount of tooth decay, about 6%, and some of the older folks were toothless. They tended to be shorter and not as strong, not as robust as the other 2 groups. They were dominated by the other 2 groups, and they tended to be overweight as well. They were certainly healthier than his patients back in Cleveland, but they were not as healthy as the other 2 groups. Between the herders who had no plant foods in the diet and the hunter-gatherers who had a mixed diet, Dr. Price found that those with the mixed diet were actually stronger and had better proportions. And so his conclusion from the African experience was that the ideal diet avoids the extremes between too much animal food and too much plant foods. It's somewhere in the middle. And, you know, it could be more in this direction, more in this direction. But I think that's good news for us because it means that we don't have to have some kind of extreme diet where we're only eating steak or we're only eating, rice. But it's a mixed diet that creates the best health. Here are, this is the Maasai, very, very tall. These are the herding people. But no matter which diet they started on, none of these groups was immune to the ravages of the displacing foods of Western commerce, causing the tremendous tooth decay and pain And then in the next generation, just took one generation for this to happen, the narrowing of the face and the